Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Todd Buonapane. I'm an equity member. I'm an equity counselor. Welcome to the Actors Equity in Memoriam gathering. We are here to honor the lives of our union siblings that have passed on. And thank you, Jonathan Brody. First of all, I am coming to you from the equity offices in Manhattan, the ancestral land of the Lenape or the Lenape-Hoking peoples. I want to acknowledge that each person on the Zoom is zooming in from the ancestral lands of different Indigenous peoples. And this acknowledgement demonstrates a commitment to beginning the process of working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism. Oh, colonialism. There we go. Next, I will read the code of conduct that is read before every official equity gathering. Actors Equity Association is committed to providing a respectful environment free of discrimination and harassment, regardless of an individual's race, religion, color, sex, age, national origin, sexual orientation, disability, gender identity or expression, ancestry, pregnancy, or any characteristic prohibited by law. Because the union expects participants in its activities, events, and meetings to respect one another and to recognize and value individual differences, Actors Equity Association will not tolerate discriminatory, harassing, disrespectful, or otherwise unacceptable behavior at any of its activities, events, or meetings. It adopts the following code of conduct and expects those that participate in any of its activities, events, or meetings to abide by it. In addition to this code of conduct, Actors Equity Association has an anti-discrimination and anti-harassment policy and complaint procedure. I'm admitting someone, which covers staff employees of the union. This code of conduct is not intended to replace or amend that staff policy. Along with that code of conduct, we would like to set a tone of kindness. We are here to honor, celebrate, and tell a fun anecdote. We are joined by members, friends, and family members, and disparaging talk will just not be tolerated. So welcome. A bunch of us had trouble getting on Zoom today, so I'm so happy that we are all here and breathing and calm now. The reading of the names of deceased members began during the AIDS crisis in the 80s. And as many of you know, queer equity members were dying at alarming rates. And all too often, these members were dying alone. Equity's council decided to honor deceased members by standing and reading their names aloud. Then there would be time for personal remembrances, stories, and eulogies. But for a time, this beautiful tradition was just for those attending the monthly council meeting. Thanks to a resolution in the Black Theater Matters Bill and the 2021 convention and a resolution passed by the Equity Council, this tradition is now open to all, and we do it once every quarter. I welcome you all to offer your hearts and good energy to all gathered in this digital space and to those memories of our fellow union members that have passed on. It's a time of solidarity, and I love that we can show it here 4 times a year. So here we go. As we read these names, we ask you to offer us a little grace with pronunciation. We have done our best. Now I'm honored to introduce Maureen Moore, James A. Williams, and Kim Titus to read the names of equity members that have passed between April 1st and June 31st of 2023. Maureen?
Member losses in April. Barbara Beck, Harry Belafonte, Rand Bridges, Marilyn Child, Michael Howell Dean, Ron Faber, Judy Farrell, Wendy Fisher, Herb Foster, Daryl Glazer, Rachel Hennelly, Elizabeth Holloway, Bert Houle, John Huey, Elizabeth Hubbard, Barry Humphreys, J. Johnston, Cecil Jones, Manny Kleinmuntz, Judith Ann Levitt, Ben Lippitz, Carol Locatell, James McDonald, Bob Moak, Robert Nairn, Terence O'Hara, Abe Polikoff, Susan Riskin, Michael Sander, Janet Sarno, Alan Schneier, Garn Stevens, Jonathan Terry, Lawrence Tobin, Scott Utley, Joseph Warfield, Jim Wilhelm.
Member losses in May. Ed Ames, Catherine Beckwith, Janie Braxton, Barbara Bren, Gerald Castillo, Marlene Clark, Ed Deasy, Gil Fisher, James E. Gansner, Charles Hall, Ron Jacoby, Alain Keller, William Knight, George Maharis, Murray Melvin, Eric R. Moreland, James J. Murphy, Michael Norrell, Adele O'Brien, Marjorie Panetti, Doug Patterson, Joaquin Romaguera, William Saluga, Scott Schnacht, James Shelby, Anthony Spina, Rick Stokes, Don Took, Frank W. Wicks, Kurt Williams, Jacqueline Zaman.
Member losses in June. John Beasley, Brad Bradley, Edward Payson Call, Carol Higgins Clark, Nicholas Coster, Ron Daniels, Deborah Deeby, John Dela, Paul S. Eckstein, Deborah Engel, Fred Forrest, Jack Gardner, Kenneth Garner, Brett Hadley, Adrian Hall, Patricia Hamilton, Terrence Hardiman, Jesse N. Holmes, Glenda Jackson, Tariq Khan, Michael Lamont, Barry McGuire, Max Morath, Leah D. Mortensen, Barry Newman, Lou Halter, Dorothy Rice, George Riddle, Michael Seneca, Cheryl V. Weaver, Paxton Whitehead, Treat Williams,
Thank you, friends. For those reading along, Barbara Bryn was put in May and June, so Kim did not skip Barbara Bryn in June. And I just want to thank Maureen, James, and Kim with their beautiful trained speaking voices. What a lovely way to honor people just by saying their names with these beautiful voices. We now have 44 minutes. And so I would like to open the floor to individual remembrances, anecdotes, and celebrations. Please keep your statements to about 2 minutes. We want time for everyone who wants to speak to get the chance. I'm not going to keep track of time, but I feel like if we're going too long, then I will. And I'd like to remind you all to be kind, respectful, and positive. We want a positive tone to create in this meeting. If you would like to speak, I see it's already happening. Please use the raise your hand feature. It can be found under the reactions tab at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you're on a phone, if you can't find it, speak up. I'll just put you on a list. And I think I will be giving people permission to turn on their mic and camera. I'm not sure how we're doing this right now. But let's start with Jonathan Brody, who I see first.
Oh, hello there. First, I just wanted to mention that I think I brought this up before, but there was once years ago a resolution passed that when these meetings were happening in person, that at the end of the reading of the names, we would honor everyone. Oh, pardon me. Jasper would like to say hello as well. That we honor everyone with a standing ovation. And even though we do this on Zoom now, I do it in my home, and just something, if it feels right to you, as most of these, well, a lot of these people were performers, and what a lovely way to honor their lives and careers. But I did want to speak about Herb Foster, who was really one of the loveliest men I ever worked with. He was a Canadian actor, and he came into Me and My Girl as a replacement. I was a youngster, and I thought he was, very old at the time. By my figuring, he was probably about 53 or something like that, or not even. He was truly a silver fox, with a beautiful shock of white hair and piercing blue eyes. Just lovely. And he excelled at playing Brits. He worked often at Stratford Shakespeare in Canada. He worked on both sides of our border often. I was jealous of him for being able to go back and forth from musicals to plays, because that was something I wasn't able to do at the time. And I did get to see him in, I think, a couple of Shakespeare in the Park productions in New York. And he was just always gracious, a really, really beautiful soul, and a very talented actor. So we'll miss you, Herb. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Next, I have our Eastern Vice President, Dee Hody.
Hi, thanks, Todd. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Jonathan, for that. I was also a replacement in Me and My Girl, and remember Herb Foster as being so generous and completely open to whatever I had to bring to the show. It's not easy to be a replacement, but what a lovely group of people. That is such a fond memory for me of Me and My Girl. Those a year and a half or so I was in it. I want to remember Herb as being polite and a gentleman and all those things that Jonathan said. I also have a couple of other people I'll speak to now. And I did not know Barbara Byrne. I did not know Paxton Whitehead. I did not know Treat Williams, but gosh, I admired their work and what contributions they made to the arts and to humanity by virtue of their being available and on stage to us, mostly on stage, but of course in film too. Although he was not my agent, Jim Wilhelm was a very good friend, and his passing is worth noting. There was a lovely service for him in May, and or I should say commemorative gathering of an evening that was what a good soul, and we will miss his agenting as well as his just good-natured chiding when things were going one way or another. That was always welcome. And I worked on the national tour of Will Rogers Follies with George Riddle. He played the father in the tour and taught us all everything that year about how to invest your money and get a 401k and learn to do IRAs. And but he was just checking the stock market every day, and he taught himself to do it. And I was a little jealous of him, a little shocked. But he also, I'll tell this story on him, was discovered one night. We were in Los Angeles for 6 weeks, I think, at the Pantages. Traveled back with me when things actually played that long on a tour, because we did move. He was living in his dressing room, which is so against the law. And because that's how we saved money. He was saving this per diem and putting it into his stock market account. Hilarious. We were like, what planet are you from, George? You can't. And I think it was there was either a dog, a security animal that went, because he said, well, I got a little fridge here and there's a bathroom right there and I can do and eat food and I go out and get my, it was hilarious. He had to get a room after that. It really cracked me up. I said, well, it's a good way to save money, but not the safest way to be. Anyway, and also I wanted to speak to Adele O'Brien, who was an actress at the Actors Theater of Louisville. One of their, I think when Victor Jory, the father of John Jory, created Actors Theater, she was among the first in the class that came, probably with son John Jory. She was the character actress of all time. She was played the mother. I did a production of Quilters there when that was the big hot thing. And I have fond memories of being in my first real play with a bunch of women. And Adele was our mom, and she was just the best, salt of the earth, great lessons in acting from her, just being on the stage, and that you didn't have to work too hard if you just kind of said the words and said the truth. So I will miss her. And that's it. All our friends, we salute and thank you. And I also sit and applaud at this moment, but I'll stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee. When we were young and starting out in this business, we all remember that older person that said, start your 401k. Because I feel like we all have had that.
Believe me, I did.
Our chorus vice president, Al Bandonis.
Hey, everyone. Thank you, Todd. As vice president, I want to thank all of you for making the time today to come and honor your fellow members. But I do want to thank Todd Buonapane, Maureen Moore, Kim Titus, and James A. Williams. Those are fellow members, elected members who've found the time to keep this beautiful tradition going, to honor and celebrate the members that we have lost. So thank you, the four of you, for finding this time. I wanted to talk about two people, Brad Bradley and Ben Lippitz. Brad Bradley was a true triple threat, a singer, actor, dancer, a wonderful friend. Brad identified strongly with the chorus. He was in several, I want to say 7 original Broadway companies in the chorus. And he created a podcast called The Broadway Backbone, where he interviewed members of the chorus, not just on Broadway, but across the country, working all our various contracts. 97 episodes are cataloged online. Episode 97, one of his friends, a fellow chorus member, interviewed Brad. Brad was the subject of the final Broadway Backbone. And if you have the chance to listen to it, it is beyond moving. And I urge you to take that time to listen to it, to honor Brad. I had the great fortune of doing several productions of Spamalot with him. There were regional productions where I was Arthur and he was my Patsy. He was one of the original covers for Patsy on Broadway. And just as Patsy has Arthur's back, through each production, Brad had mine. And I will miss him. And the other person I want to talk about today is Ben Lippitz. I'll tell you personally, I didn't know Ben. Ben was in the original company of Lion King, but a zillion years ago, back when there were breakdowns that one could buy for $25 if you sent somebody a check, I was connected with Ben, and I would write him a check every month and he would send me those breakdowns, which certainly aided my career. And when it was decided that council was no longer going to read these names, personally, I fought against that. Even though we're doing this and it opens up, reading these names into the record of our association is so very important to me. And one of the arguments I made was there are major stars who will have their names immortalized on a marquee on Broadway. The lights will dim and they will be on the marquee. And most of us will not have that opportunity. Well, Ben Lippitz wasn't a name. Ben Lippitz was very unknown outside of the Lion King family. But Disney decided to honor him that way, in a way reserved for superstars. Ben Lippitz was put on the marquee of the Lion King on Broadway after his passing, and the lights dimmed for him. May we all have that blessing. And by showing up today, we are doing the same thing. So to Bradley, to Ben, and everyone else whose name was read, thank you all for showing up to honor them.
Thank you, Al. I'm just going to add to the Brad Bradley of it all. I worked with Brad a few times. The last thing I did with him was Guys and Dolls. And he was Rusty Charlie and I was Nicely. And Rusty Charlie sings one song and then mostly is folded into the ensemble. And a lot of our cast was pretty young. We were at the Oslo Theater in Sarasota. And Brad taught that chorus how to be members of the chorus, how to give focus when you need to give focus, but then how to be alive and create characters, because it's Runyon Land, so everyone got to be a different person. And he didn't walk up to people and say, do this, do that, but he just created the whole time and just set a template for everyone else to follow. And just like we have that person that teaches us how to to open up our 401k, you need those people ahead of you to say, okay, so that's what I can do in this job. That's what I can do. And Brad just led by example all the time. And I didn't know he was ill, and I'm heartbroken that he's gone. All right, we'll move on to Kim. Hi, Kim.
Hey, Todd. I have two that I wanted to make note of because they made particularly a great contribution to the Dallas-Fort Worth area here and to equity. The first is Adrian Hall. Adrian was the second artistic director at the Dallas Theater Center following the founder, Paul Baker. Adrian opened the doors to equity at the Dallas Theater Center and put them on the road to ultimately winning the Tony in 2017, long after he left. The second is Cheryl Weaver. Cheryl and I worked on many Christmas carols together and on Jacques Brel is Alive and Well, etc. She was just a lovely, giving actress and a good friend. She was here in Dallas for several years before moving to Chicago and then Kansas City. So just a lovely, lovely person.
Thanks, Kim. Pat Loeb.
Hi, I'm not going on camera because it's hot as shit here and I'm sick. You don't want to see it. But I wanted two things. One is to say thank you in looking at those names and having the time to, what we did in LA back in the day was to do a moment of silence and to have a moment to give grace and silence to these people who I had forgotten had passed, and thank you. He mentioned Paxton Whitehead. When I was an undergrad in the Pleistocene era, Paxton Whitehead would come through the campus theater with the pre-Broadway productions of things as director and as actor. And I wanted to just mention his grace and his kindness on a campus that had no official theater department or classes, spending deliberate and conscious and hugely generous time with the students who were interested in theater, who, you know, our work study jobs were to help make the theater happened, the ushers and the house managers and the backstage crew and stuff. And it was so amazing to meet this larger than life human who you would watch direct or you would watch perform, teach us how to be both professional and to enjoy life at the same time. And I have such respect for him and have sent so many thoughts his way. And I thank you for putting him on the list and for Dee for reminding me to say something.
Thanks, Pat. Something somebody said, we live such extraordinary, strange lives. You know, even if someone works a regular job and they change jobs a few times in their life, they don't have the experiences that we have as actors and stage managers of getting really close with a group a couple times a year. Or if you're lucky, you have that job that lasts a few years. And sometimes a name appears on this list that you haven't thought about in a long time, but for a while they were family. And that's why I do think it's so important for us to read these names, because we live extraordinary different lives and we do honorable, important things, and everybody deserves to have their name read. I want to take a second to honor Barbara Bryn and Joaquin Ramagera, who, for you Sondheim nerds out there, the original Jack's Mother in Into the Woods, and the original Pirelli in Sweeney Todd. And I never met either of them. And I know their names because I studied liner notes and I like pored over those videos, and I could probably recreate both of their performances if asked and given enough drinks. But you know, these people were super influential on me as a young artist. And it would be ridiculous if we didn't take some special time to honor Mr. Harry Belafonte, who is an artist to the nth degree. But what I want to talk about is his activism and how important he was in the civil rights movement, and how like he just made our world better. And he could have just been a handsome singer, and he chose to use the gifts given to him and the fame to better our country and better our world. So I just wanted to say his name out there. Andrew.
Hi, everyone. I want to raise up, well, first I want to pay my respects to everyone on the list, as Todd and others have said, but I especially want to raise up the name of Don Took. Don Took was a founding member of the South Coast Repertory in Costa Mesa, California, another Tony Award-winning regional theater. I had the good fortune after college of moving out to the Southland and getting a job as a stage manager at South Coast Repertory right out off the bat. And Don was one of the grown-up actors who taught me a whole lot about the theater. He was a tall, towering kind of actor, performed in dozens and dozens of plays at South Coast Repertory, as well as up in Los Angeles. And that group, as a young stage manager, it's daunting to be surrounded by professionals who've been doing it for a while. Don was one of those who was super generous, funny, and much loved. There's a lot of us on social media from South Coast Repertory who chatted quite a bit about Don when he passed, and I just wanted to remember him as a wonderful guy and a great actor. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Anybody else? We have time. I mean, I part of me wants to just go down the list, and I'm going to raise up John Dial, who I didn't really know very well, but my first job in New York City was I was an usher and assistant house manager at Urinetown when it opened on Broadway. That was the first thing I got paid to do in New York City. And he was Senator Phipp in the original Urinetown. And he was a weird, wonderful person that was always very nice. Okay, Deborah.
Thank you. Yes, and thanks for saying my name correctly. I want to raise up the name of my friend because he died on the cusp of like the 31st to the 1st of March, the 1st of April, and I didn't know about these things. So I don't know if his name was lifted up. I want to mention my dear friend Brian Bradley, who created Vince Fontaine in the revival of Grease in 1994. And so I wanted to make sure that his name got mentioned and acknowledged.
Thank you for that. Dee, you want to talk about someone else?
I do. Thank you. I completely spaced on John Dial. My gosh, I did Footloose with him for 2 years. What a funny, hilarious, odd sort of fellow who just had he had an opinion about stuff. And he, I remember him telling me once that he'd shot a commercial for like a Super Bowl commercial. He booked a lot of commercials, and it was with our former president, the one who lives in Florida now. And he was saying it was excruciating. It was Pizza Hut or something. It was excruciating because they spent the whole day worrying about the hair. It was all about how the hair had to be in place. We laughed so hard. His gruff good humor was so appreciated and not feared, but welcome. What a charming company member he was to that show, which was full of adults who played the adults, and then the younger adults who were mostly playing the kids, some of whom were really kids and had never done a Broadway show before. There were a lot of debuts. But John and his wife adopted a child from Russia, as I recall, which I thought was remarkably brave and staggering, because I don't think he ever wanted a child until they fostered this boy for a while. And I remember him describing to me how it just broke his heart open, which is something I never expected to hear come from John, even though he's good-hearted. But the surprises that happen when you know people, and I'm sad that I did not know he had passed. So I just wanted to say his name. Footloose, that's how I know him. Thanks.
James.
I want to lift up a couple of names on the list. I want to lift up Paul Eckstein, who I had the pleasure of working with. We did the Clytemnestra trilogy at the Guthrie. And he was a part of the group Naked Angels in New York. And just a fine young man. When I met him, heck of an actor and a dynamic producer. And I also want to lift up John Beasley, who I had the pleasure of doing the August Wilson 20th Century Cycle with, the series of stage readings at the Kennedy Center. And he was also instrumental in bringing theater to the African-American community in Omaha, Nebraska, where a theater exists bearing his name.
Wow. Would anybody else like to speak? I just want to say that there's no way that there's 22 of us in this meeting, that we know everybody on this list. But there are people that know and love them, and everybody on this list was a talented actor or stage manager that I'm so happy we got to say their names out loud today. Well, oh, Joanna, coming in at the 9th inning. Sports reference, who am I? Joanna, I think you're muted.
Hi. Thank you so much. My husband and I have been watched these presentations a couple of times. I just wanted to ask you, I wanted to contact the husband of someone who was on the list, either last time or 2 times before, and I Googled him. I don't know how to do it. Can I send something to you and maybe it would get to him? He is an actor, he is in Equity, but I don't know how to get a hold of him.
Well, what we'll do at the end, I'll give everybody my email, and you can The way you and your husband are fuzzing in and out is hilarious.
Yes, that's right. I'm out now. Okay,
No, it's great. Don't
on
change
this
it.
level.
Don't change a thing. Your husband keeps stealing your focus.
Yes, I see
Um,
that. We'll discuss it later. Okay.
But email me, and I don't think the association can like give out information, but
Okay.
maybe I can help you seek them out and find some contact for that person.
Okay,
We'll see
so
what we can do together. But I'm pretty sure the association can't give out information of others.
yeah, I just wanted to send him a letter and have it get there, but I just wasn't sure how to do it. I Googled him, I couldn't find him. So how would I do that? I would just,
I'm gonna put my email address
okay,
right now. Everyone in meeting, and I always say this at the end of every one of these. If you have suggestions of how we can do this better, email me. It's in the chat right now, and we'll figure out how to do it better. Because I mean, thank you, like everyone that's thanked Kim, Maureen, James, and I just want to say that as an equity counselor, we're elected to, work for the membership, and we rarely, from negotiating contracts to making these tough decisions, we rarely get to walk away from a decision feeling like we just did something that's only good. And I feel like these meetings are only good. I walk away from every one of them uplifted, even like taking a sad thing about death, but feeling proud of what we do. And so thank you for thanking us, but also thank you for taking part of it, because it's an important part of my life. And we have another person to speak, Robert.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Robert.
Okay, just a correction. Barbara Byrne didn't die. It was Barbara Bryn, a
Right.
94-year-old British actress. So I think, Dee, you mentioned that you remember her from Into the Woods. That wasn't this person.
Last name and.
So Barbara Bryn was in Into the Woods. Barbara Byrne is somebody else.
Well, Barbara Byrne was the one who was the original mother of Jack's mother.
Okay, well, we can have this conversation.
Okay.
On
So Barbara Byrne was she was a British actress who was 94. Barbara Byrne, as far as I know, is still alive.
Wikipedia disagrees with you, but that's okay. Did you want to talk about anybody else, Robert?
No, I mean, some other, I guess Alan Arkin will be next quarter, because I have some.
If he passed in July, he will be in the next quarter.
Okay, then I'll hold off till then.
And often it's not even necessarily when they pass, it's when their passing is reported to the association. So sometimes there will, especially, there might be some people from former members that died in June that haven't quite been reported to the association yet. So the months are based on when it's reported to the association.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And we tried to do better about making sure that we can keep track of everyone, because, sometimes there are people in this business that, aren't married and don't have children, and, and so sometimes you can die a little bit anonymous. And we don't want just, because the pension department will always report it to the association, but if that person wasn't collecting a pension, so we're trying to do better to make sure we catch as many members that pass as possible. All right, I think that is it for us. Again, my email is in there. I have the weirdest name ever, tbuonapane@actorsequity.org. And reach out to me if you have any ideas of how we can do this better. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Kim and James and Maureen, and have a lovely Monday evening.